Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to this talk. And thank you to the Argentinian Academies of Science and IANAS for inviting me to address this conference. I think you have already looked at the PowerPoint presentation, which contains the numbers of women in STEM fields in various sectors of education and the workforce in various countries of the world. These PowerPoints are available, of course, for you to see and copy if you are interested in doing so. This part of my presentation, then, will discuss the barriers to girls and women in science. And we can divide these barriers into three different categories: biological, societal, and systemic. Now, if we begin with biological, there is the notion that the brain function tends to or can influence the learning of mathematics, which is the basis of all scientific learning, as you all know. And there is, and over the years, there has been the belief that women cannot do science because they do not have the brain capacity to do so. Women the world over are believed to be not as smart as men, and this is a function of their physiological makeup. Nevertheless, studies have indicated that men and women on the whole possess an equal ability to do math and to do science. In fact, boy and girl infants as young as 6 months were able to do tasks that underline mathematical ability, and the researchers found no particular differences. Boys and girls at early ages then understand math functioning equally. The problem is, as they get older and as they go into the structure of society, by which we mean, of course, education. And the attitudes and stereotypes that are translated into the structure of society's systems of education are extremely important, as teachers here in the audience already know. For example, education is not readily available to girls in many countries in the world where gender inequality persists. Girls outperform boys in some countries in Asia and Arab states. Boys tend to outperform girls in many countries, including sub-Saharan Africa and Latin America. Boys also tend to do better in many countries where applied knowledge is measured. For all students, but especially for girls, things like teachers, learning contexts, learning content, material and equipment, assessment techniques, and tools, and the overall context within which learning takes place are factors which influence, in particular, the learning ability of girls. For example, women teachers serve as role models for girls, and learning strategies in math that use problem solving and where students can ask questions helps the learning of girls. It's also important that girls and boys should be represented in terms of their images equally in textbooks and learning materials. The availability of resources, laboratory access, for example, have been shown to stimulate science interest in girls. Providing apprenticeships, mentorships, and other learning facilities are extremely valuable for girls' learning. But it is not only the inadequacies of formal learning that interfere with the girls' abilities. major psychological and emotional feelings and attitudes influence girls and their own perceptions of inadequacy, especially when confronted with gender stereotypes. These lead to their underperformance in science and math learning. Research indicates that both men and women both believe that men are better at math, despite there actually being no difference in their innate abilities. Girls reported stronger feelings of tension and anxiety related to mathematic performances in many studies, and they are more likely to suffer from what has been termed test anxiety than boys. Mathematics anxiety has been linked to a decline in performance of as much as 34 score points, equivalent to almost 1 year of school learning. Girls' lower confidence in STEM subjects is reflected in their social media communications. A Latin American study revealed that 1/3 of students' social media shares about women and girls in STEM were sexist, while 75% of all self-mocking messages about math were posted by girls. Girls appear to lose interest in STEM subjects as they get older, particularly between early and late adolescence. The gender gap in STEM becomes particularly apparent in upper secondary education, as reflected in girls' choices of advanced studies in math and science. Whatever the reason, the gender gap at a young age matters because it predicts future access in math. Kids in top-performing math groups in grade school are more likely to pursue future careers in computer science and other STEM science subjects. Now, the family plays a major role in determining young girls' education and their attitudes towards school. Parents who have traditional attitudes and beliefs about gender roles will transmit them to their female children. Parental expectations that do not include higher education or career training for daughters plays heavily on a girl's decision-making ability. Girls are often brought up within the family context to believe that math and science are masculine topics and that girls are innately inferior in these subjects. And mothers in particular have a strong influence on girls, and if they encourage and support their female children, the likelihood of their studying math and science increases. Social economic status of the family is instrumental also in shaping girls' education, and especially that of girls studying math and science. Of great significance, however, is the influence that girls' choices are made as a result of peer influences. In fact, the greatest predictor of a girl's choosing math and science over other subjects and feeling confident in the STEM fields is the influence of their peers. Now, in terms of social attitudes and beliefs, cultural and social norms influence girls' perceptions about their abilities, their role in society, and their career and life aspirations. They learn attitudes and stereotypes which categorize women as inferior. In the first instance, the role of media, and in today's world, especially social media, play an important part in transmitting belief beliefs about women and their abilities. The media perpetuate gender stereotypes and influence educational and career decisions of young women. The way in which women and girls are portrayed in the media can influence their choice of educational and career options. For example, gendered stereotypes, such as showing men and boys at study and work in math or scientific disciplines, and especially on television advertisements, can influence young girls' perceptions of themselves. Computer science is a primary example. And in many of these fields, and particularly in computer science, male job candidates are preferred over women applicants, even when women outperform the men. Another factor of considerable importance is the extent of gender equality in the wider society. This is strongest in countries in which women are not believed to be equal to men. However, even in the more so-called progressive societies, such as North America or Western Europe, despite lip service to notions of democracy, women are not considered equal, as shown by the substantial evidence of underrepresentation in STEM disciplines in these areas, as already shown in the PowerPoint slides. And there are also, of course, salary differentials between men and women, and other measures of inequality. There are also examples of differences in male and female behavior. For example, competent men are seen as likable, while competent women are seen as bitchy. And men are more readily promoted because of their future promise, whereas women have to demonstrate that by their performance. And of course, as we well know, sexual harassment is a constant problem for women in the workplace. Also important in society is the degree to which gender equality is on the public agenda politically, which includes equity policies, affirmative action, employment equity legislation, and other financial inducements in the form of fellowships that can enlarge girls' and young women's involvement in STEM education and careers. Now, what can we do to include more women in these fields? So here are briefly a few recommendations. At the individual level, girls must be encouraged to develop their spatial skills, to reinforce their belief in themselves, and to reinforce any interest and motivation to study STEM subjects. Parents and families must deal with their own misconceptions about girls having less ability than boys, and should themselves expand their knowledge of STEM educational and occupational opportunities. Families should be able to connect to advisors to consult and provide knowledge about opportunities in STEM. And the peer support of young girls should be encouraged. At school, teachers must develop and teach a gender-responsive curriculum and make gender-neutral assessments. Societies in general need to become more supportive of gender equality, and gender stereotypes in the media and in policies and legislation should be identified and changed. All interventions that would help the increased motivation of girls and young women in STEM education should be supported. By way of conclusion, we've seen that in the past 2 or 3 decades, women have indeed made significant advances in university participation, including in program areas that had previously been more populated by men. But one area that consistently remains male-dominated, the science, technology, STEM fields, remain completely or almost completely male-dominated. Now, when women choose degrees, programs, in various programs, including even science, the consequence of that is that they don't go into engineering and computer science, which on average lead to better outcomes in the labor market in terms of employment, job match, and earnings. So although mathematical ability, as we've seen, explains a role, it does not explain gender differences in STEM choices. Because young women with a high level of mathematical ability are significantly less likely to enter STEM fields than young men. There are all kinds of reasons for this, some of which we've explored today, but there are also others. By way, though, of trying to end on a positive note, let's note that there are two major worldwide societal factors which will continue to play major roles in shaping the world to come. The first is that we owe it to all humankind to provide equality and equity to women who compose half of the world's population. And it has already been amply demonstrated that when economic, social, and political progress tends to develop better and faster in societies where men and women are equal, or almost equal. Moreover, and this is quite important, I think, the world of science and technology will play an ever more important role in the future, especially in applied areas. So it is imperative that skilled and trained women have equal access to these growing economic opportunities.